Well, hello and welcome to another episode of PROLIX Comics BOLLIX, where myself, Nick, and himself.
Clive and his drinking glove.
Yeah, Clive, why is there a glove on the bottom of is that like a thermal regulator or something like that? Is that keeping it
It's
cold?
coding. Some people watching know, and it means it's time. It's time to do the thing.
It's time to bring it. Okay, I see.
It's time to storm the Capitol.
Okay. Oh, I see. I see. It's a little early for that, Clive. Yeah, give it a few months. Um,
No,
so,
we're gonna be ready.
so yeah, so this time it's my choice, and we on our last episode we did what the hell were they called? They were samurai stories about Sabu and Ichi.
Yes.
We did Sabu and Ichi, and that put me in mind of wanting to run with that thread and doing a bit more samurai sort of stuff. Although, funnily enough, initially what I wanted to do,
It's
which
not
we will
really
talk
samurai,
about.
is it? It's action with swords. I don't know if it counts as
Okay,
samurai.
sure, yeah, okay, fine. But yeah, so I was thinking I wanted to do Lady Snowblood, but actually that's not really why. I think I ended up choosing Lady Snowblood because I'd already chosen to do HANAPPE BAZOOKA.
Mm.
HANAPPE BAZOOKA is written by Kazuo Koike, who's best known for surprise, surprise, Lone Wolf and Cub.
Mm.
But it's also drawn and I think co-written by
We'll get there, but it's got to be co-written by Go Nagai. There's no way
oh
that's
yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yes. Although there's an element of trashiness and sleaziness to Kazuo Koike's work that I guess we'll unpack a little bit as we talk about both of these today, because he's also the guy who wrote Hanzo the Razor.
Mad Bull 34, if we're talking trash.
Yeah, A Crying Freeman,
Yeah,
which is
Lone
quite
Wolf
a
Cub,
bit
Samurai
affectionate.
Executioner. He did
Spy.
the Japanese stuff, the Hulk comic, right? He also wrote stuff for the Japanese Hulk comic.
Okay, I didn't know that, but that's interesting. Oh, he's written an enormous amount, like is but I think always going to be best known for Lone Wolf and Cub. And of everything I've read by him, it is, I think, I have yet to read anything by him that's better than Lone Wolf and Cub.
No, it's very good. Samurai Executioner is really good as well.
It's also very good too, yeah.
And actually, just to get ahead of ourselves, this is really good as well.
Yes.
But not quite. Yeah, Lone Wolf and Club is just almost perfect, really, isn't it? As a comic, I think. Just from beginning to end.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But it's way too long to talk about. And it's way too long for me to reread unless at some point we decide.
And we'd have to watch all the films and all the TV series.
TV series, all 3 seasons, and which I've already done once, but I'm always going to be happy to go back to. But anyway, so
maybe in our dotage we can do that. Which,
as it turns out,
almost upon us already.
We're very close.
Yes.
But HANAPPE BAZOOKA is it's 10 volumes.
Let's do Snowblood first.
I know, but I'm just saying it's 10 volumes, right? But as it turns out, only one of them is available with scan data in English, right? And then the second one is available as a raw scan, and after that, you'd have to go to a secondhand bookshop in Japan and buy them and just look at the pictures.
Which we could do.
Which we could do. So we're not going to talk about that one first, but then I realized we probably wouldn't be maybe enough to talk about, so I suggested that we do this. Can you guess when this came out? Can you guess maybe what else was going on in the world?
Oh, I know what you're referencing to. Of course, it's Reservoir Dogs.
That's the one?
Yes.
So, yes. So we're going to also talk Lady Snowblood, which is another Kazuo Koike story, but illustrated in this case by Kazuo Kamimura, who's not necessarily known for all that much else. I think this is kind of
died young as well.
Before. Yes, yeah. Which was
but so this originally was in Weekly Playboy, right, from 72, 73.
Yep.
And all four volumes in the way they've done it, put out by Dark Horse. And so the slightly confusing thing about the Dark Horse one, I thought, so there's a little bit of inconsistency, right? So, for instance, in the first volume, I noticed, because they've gone it's always kind of annoys me now is if they've tried to flip the whole thing,
Yes.
reads from front to back, but and they've moved stuff around, but they haven't taken into account. So there's like some leftover background noises and stuff in hiragana and katakana that it's the wrong way around.
Right.
It's very confusing, and then they seem to have sorted it out again. But then the other thing they've done in the first volume, I think, they've reordered the panels so it reads left to right. But then from about the second volume on, it reads correctly from right to left, like it would in a Japanese comic.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Which
There's
is
something
very
off.
confusing. And I just don't understand. Like, it seems like, is it really? I can't imagine. I mean, especially comics fans, right? Comics fans are not necessarily your regular hunter. Are comics fans really that put off by, oh, I have to, because they do it now, right? They almost everything, because it's such a pain in the ass to reorder everything. It makes no
Oh
sense.
yes.
And especially for splash pages, because then you have to, you know, you have to do it. So I was thinking, just publish it the way it was originally. It's not that difficult to figure out, right? It's just back to front, right to left, done.
Well,
That's it. It's not
famously, the original. So I think it was. Oh shit, was it First Comics? I think. Anyway, there was a run, a brief run of Lone Fun Cub done back in the 80s and early 90s. They were published like basically they published the individual. So like the versions that they put Dark Horse put out later on were much larger and more like the Japanese kind of big Tankobon collections. Yeah. But these were just the individual like chapters were published as kind of square bound North American comic book size. And anyway, they were flipping all the art so that it did read. But that creates a situation where Ogami Ito is left-handed all of a sudden.
Right.
Because they have basically like flipped
the
panel, which is weird.
But it's interesting that this comes from that like I think now I don't think anyone does it anymore. Do they bother anyone? I don't think anyone does. Everyone's used to,
so.
And they've done the whole thing about, hey, this is not the and all that. People know what to do. And it's funny. It's not funny. It's I mean, yes, of course, people have adapted. They're like, yep, this is how it's done. It's not that hard to figure out. So interesting. This is a bit of a relic.
Of that era.
When it'd be nice if they could reprint it properly, because I don't think Dark House have put it out again, have they? I don't think.
No.
So obviously,
I'm going to assume
Bill was the impetus to put this out there, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that like me, you probably saw the film long before you ever read
the comics.
Yes. So I would have seen the Lady Snowblood films. Yeah, back when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when I was obsessed with Zatoichi and Lone for Cub and all the rest of the stuff. The cinematics.
I would have seen, we'll get to it later, but I would have seen Broken Oath first as well. And wouldn't have known it was a remake.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you don't already know the story of Lady Snowblood, basically, she is the daughter of a woman who is whose husband is killed and whose son is murdered, and she is then sexually assaulted by a group of scumbags who are also leveraging fears of the time around the draft, right? So the story opens
up draft exclusion scam, right? Where
so you can pay money and supposedly you won't be drafted then. And this is, I'm assuming that is this the draft for the war in
Russo-Japanese War?
The Russo-Japanese.
We should point out, even though there's a lot of stuff in here which is era specific, it's the Meiji. It's actually it's hang on, I made the note of this for this. Let me find it. It's so the flashbacks, the stuff that happened is in 1874, and then I think it's 20 years later in 1894 where the majority, and then the sequel jumps forward about a decade, but it's all Meiji era. And however, I think it's in the source comic as well, but definitely in the films. I think they're clearly satirizing a later period in Japanese. I think they're going for the militaristic kind of 30s. right? I got a real feel that they want to talk about that more than they do Meiji. So they've kind of layered a little.
Yes, it's like they're trying to, in a way, they're trying to say they hear the seeds of that coup and that and kind of that nascent fascism.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter so much, but I mean, if you're interested in history at all, they've slightly over-egged the pudding.
Yes,
like they
yes.
slightly jumped the gun. But
and there's no question that I think in that when we talk about the films that second film is about the 1970s. You know, as much as it's about there is Osugi Sakai and the guy who is I can't remember his name, but the guy who the main anarchist character played by Itami in that second film was based on, right?
Yeah.
They were historical figures, and the police really did crack down. But I think that's more about what's going on in 1974 or 1973 in Japan with the students having the.
Well, we'll get
there. So anyway, this draft exclusion scam is running, and basically there's this rumor
not a draft excluder scam. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's got
when
to
they
do
were selling these very poorly put together
carpets to put under your door. Yeah,
they're full of holes, and people were very, my home is cold. Much worse than that.
Yes, the dysfunctional kotatsu salesman, right? This thing's shit. My legs are freezing. But anyway, yeah, so basically they've told people like in the villages that anyone who shows up dressed in white, that they are not only they're coming to take your kids away to send them to war, but they're also going to be their blood will be drunk by the wealthy. There's this whole like vampiristic, you know, Westerners kind of fear.
It's a bit Protocols of the Elders of Zion, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, basically the new school teacher comes to town with his wife and kid, and he's wearing white and is mistaken for one of these people, and he's set about by these thugs who are also at the same time taking money. He's murdered, kid's murdered, and yeah, she's assaulted and then basically taken hostage by one of these thugs. This is all shown in flashback. We do, like in typical kind of Japanese comics form, we're given a few stories to establish who our main character is, right? Oyuki, who is or Shuriyuki Hime, Lady Snowblood. She is so she's like a hired assassin, but then we get a flashback establishing what her backstory is, and this is it. So she turns out to be the child of this woman who has murdered actually one of the four. She's already killed the guy who kind of took her away with him. But unfortunately, she ends up getting sent to prison and can't complete her urami, right? Her grudge. She doesn't get her revenge. So she has sex with a whole bunch of dudes in jail in order to get pregnant, to have a son that will finish her blood vendetta, but she gives birth to a daughter instead. And the daughter basically grows up and is trained to be an instrument of vengeance, right? That's pretty much the story. And unlike Lone for Cub and some of the other things, which are much, much longer, really, you know, there's a few little stories in it, but really that is more or less the story, right? There's a lot else other than in the comics. It's really her attempt to find these other three, one of them's a woman, these other three people, and kill them for her mom.
But also along the way, she occasionally gets sidelined by other characters who either ask her for help or kind of blackmail her into doing the deeds for them, right?
She has a katana inside of her umbrella. That's kind of her gimmick. Yep. And the art, I think, is really quite beautiful. It's different, very different than Goseki Kojima, who did the Samurai Executioner and Lone Cub. It's a much more, it seems more Bunty friendly almost. You know, you can see this in a girl's comic.
Right.
It's just something about, like, there's something very kind of almost...
certainly tragic enough to be in a girl.
Definitely. But it almost seems French in some ways as much as it is Japanese. A real fin de siècle kind of quality about the art. One thing that struck me is that it's definitely more sexual and sexualized actually than the film versions are, right?
Oh yes.
Funny given who they cast, that they pulled right back from having her fight topless or fight nude, which she kind of regularly does in the comic.
Yeah, no, no, no. That was my takeaway as well. Is it's really, and sometimes gratuitously so as well.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's some stuff in there. There's no reason for instance, this character to be like a predatory lesbian or something like that, other than just for kicks. So it's, yeah, no, it is definitely layered on gratuitously every now and again. I don't have a problem with that myself, but yes, I didn't expect that necessarily because
The sleaziness of it all.
I mean the
Yeah.
films are not really at all. I mean, there's
No.
hardly anything like that in them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's more nudity in the Lone from Cub films, far more.
Right.
There's more women actually fighting topless or topless with tattoos in those films. Um, yeah. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to
Yeah, no,
really
it's
say.
a damn good comic.
Nice and short. It's I mean, by
Yeah,
Japanese standards, it's just 4 volumes.
yeah,
It's
each
an
one's
easy.
about 200 pages each. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, no, it would be nice to see it, like I said, put out again properly in a slightly less annoying um
Mm.
but no, I mean I can see what it's fascinating as well to think about at this time. These things, they didn't waste any time putting them on screen, right? Like
No, yeah, I mean, it's like
comics
right
still
away.
running, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so this has actually been adapted a few times. So
Hmm.
you've got the two Tosha Fujita movies with um Maki Keijo,
Yeah.
Keijo Maki, Lady Snowblood. Then you've got the unofficial Golden Harvest Kung Fu remake with Angela Mao, which
Mhm.
we'll talk about, Broken Oath. And then we're not going to talk about 2001's The Princess Blade. Did you ever see that?
Nope, I did not. I remember it coming out, funnily enough, and
Yeah.
then I remember thinking, no, I don't. That does
No, no,
not look
it
good at
was
all.
it was very good. It was a kind of SF version starring Yumiko Shaku, directed by Shinsuke Sato, who would later go on to become quite a big deal because he went on to do like the Gantz movies and
Okay.
I Am a Hero, and currently the box office gold that is the Kingdom series, the live action version of that. I think
Okay.
they've done three of them now. Again, very not my
Hmm.
kind of thing. And Princess Blade, yeah, I mean slick and all that, but just
Hmm.
give me the good old stuff, right? But
Hmm.
also one I didn't realize until I was looking this up, and I am interested in. There's a anime series from
What?
2021 called Joran, the Princess of Snow and Blood.
Okay. And
Now,
it's inspired by, but not a direct.
I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay.
sure, but it seems to be pretty Lady Snowblood. So I'd be very
Okay.
interested to see
Yeah.
that.
And then apparently there was two, very recently, there were two stage productions, apparently, as well. I was reading that were done in Japan. Um, which is a weird thing, like weird to think of like stage versions of
There's a bit of a boom for stage productions of films
old
recently in
comics
Japan. Like there's
and
loads of them.
movies.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
Um. So yeah, like we said, it was turned into a couple of iconic movies, both directed by Fujita Toshiya, who had previously directed Mikokaji in some of the Alley Cat Rock
Okay.
films, right? And of course, it's interesting as well. I was watching this, rewatching, as I imagine those few as well. These were both
I've
old.
seen the first one many times. I'd only actually seen Love Song of Vengeance the once, and it's always
Right.
interesting to how things change over time
Yes,
because
yes,
I
absolutely.
remember not liking that very much the first time I
Um,
watched, and this time being like, "Oh, wait, this is much more interesting
yeah,
than
this
I
time
remember
I
it
liked
being."
it more than the first one.
I did too.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that so the other thing that kind of surprised me as well was, so prior to this, uh Kajimeko had already been in the female Scorpion 701, which is of course a Toei series, right? And
Right.
I'd always kind of assumed and remembered wrongly that this must be a Toei series as well, right? But it's not, it's
Hmm.
Toho, right? It's Toho plus someone called Tokyo Eiga.
Is that though because Toho had that tie-up with Koike uh,
Probably.
because of Lone from Cub, right? And
Yeah,
I think that was Katsu's productions, right? That was Shintaro Katsu
right,
was making those for his brother.
right.
Wakayama. So yeah, I suspect
Right, yeah.
there was that kind of, I think there was, yeah, I think anything that Koike was writing was sort of somehow earmarked for Toho at that
But it's
time.
interesting that you kind of remember it as another Toei kind of actioner, right? But it's not. And you quickly realize as well, even if you miss the Toho thing at the beginning, the logo, you're like, hang on, where's all the Toei faces? Like,
Right.
they're not in this film, right? Like, I was
Right.
expecting to see certain people and they're not there, right?
And you recognize certain ones that again you're like, oh, but they're Daiei faces, right? Because a lot of those
Yeah.
Daiei people then moved over to Toho when Daiei
my favorite Nishimura Ko.
Yes.
Hebi in the Hanzo series. Always a pleasure to see.
Yep.
Brilliantly shot as well by Masaki Tamura. Great music by Masaki Hirano. Was the theme tune as well.
I mean,
Go on to be used in Kill Bill and stuff like that.
Yeah, the first film, I mean, it holds up. There's no question.
Oh no, it's a really good film. It's a really solid film.
The scenes of the snow suddenly turning red. I mean, the scenes which are amazingly recreated and lifted by Broken Oath. That's having not seen Broken Oath before, I was blown away by like, oh, they just reset that shot up entirely the same way, especially the birth in prison stuff, right? But yeah, it is all really well done.
We should mention as well, because I think we kind of take it for granted that everyone knows this stuff and you know, and everyone has the same sensibilities, and should mention that it is really fucking violent and bloody as well, right? Like,
yes, not so much sex as we kind of said, far less than the actual comic does, but definitely an enormous amount of arterial spray pumping out of people. Somebody's cut entirely in half at one point.
Yes, that's awesome. That's just like, wow, fuck. And also, some people might be uncomfortable with a certain amount of child nudity, especially after having seen a child being bullied, basically, for a bullying montage, and then suddenly they're totally starkers. I would imagine that's something that might raise a few eyebrows nowadays. Sure. Well, so the other thing I was surprised, this is the thing that surprised me watching this. There's a scene early on when she goes to like a peasant village, right? And to look for someone, and all the peasants are like, so, and they're very cackling. They're very like, you know, the Welsh in comics represents the strike, right?
Right.
Like, and I was thinking, interesting that this film never got in trouble with the Brackemin rights.
Oh, people, right. Okay.
I was thinking, this one seems to have slipped through the net, right? Because they're pretty full on,
right?
Kind of lower caste people, right? And you know, which got some films like just totally removed, right? So that's kind of interesting to note that this managed to just slip past. But no, yeah, it's a great film. It does hold up. But yes, same as you, I was like, back in the day, I thought first one classic, second one, yeah, a bit too ambitious for its own good. But this time, I was like, fuck me, this sequel's really awesome. Like,
and it's kind of almost woven from whole cloth, because the first film dispenses with the entire comic, right? So basically,
pretty much. There's a few bits and pieces they've like repurposed and jerry rigged.
Mostly, her revenge story certainly finishes. And actually, I will say a couple of things that, again, maybe it's obvious, but Kaiji Mako was beautiful. And it's been a while since I watched the Scorpion female prisoner films as well, but it makes me think I need to go back and rewatch them again soon, because I was just captivated by how she is the comic book character come to life. Actually, she really does look like the human version of that.
Absolutely.
And that final moment, which I think is even more powerful than the comic, where she's finished her revenge, she kind of walks forward, she falls down into the snow, and she does this gut-wrenching scream face down. It's just like really powerful, like really well done.
Spoilers, she does survive, and so this
she does, and I'm going to say one other thing. Sorry, there is a character who's introduced in the comics who looks like he's come straight out of Dragon Ball Z. He's the scam artist slash novelist, right? And he's this old
Oh
geezer with this
yes.
weird
Oh
and kind of
yes.
like wispy hair, you know. And he is cast as a much more
Younger. Yes.
younger kind of like what's the word for
Presence.
wolf like, you know, with helmet hair, like that
Lupine. Yes.
70s, yeah,
So it's
lupine, yeah.
yes. Harada Yoshio plays the kind of version of that character in this one, right? So
Yeah, a
yeah, he's much more
much
dashing and
sexier.
handsome, and yeah, yeah.
And that's a very specific 70s Japanese thing. Like, where did those dudes go? Like, are they still in Japan? But there was that period of time when you got your Sonny Chibas and your that guy, and whoever the guy then who shows up who's almost the same character, but not him. Initially, I was like, is that the same? But it's not. It's somebody else plays the kind of he turns out to be a doctor, actually, right? He's like the doctor works in the slums, the brother of our
Right,
anarchist character.
right.
But he's the same kind of look, that kind of.
Speaking as well of great faces, you got Shin Kishida as like the vampiric aristocrat looking
Jesus.
guy who who's yeah, so basically this story has
I
to do
guess we,
with this
okay,
kind of
yes.
right-wing group, right? Who,
Yes.
and like I said, they've layered on and to your point, you're quite right, they've layered on the 70s as well, right? So yeah, there's whole police torture, and you're thinking, yeah, this is Kempai Tai stuff, right? This, I'm not sure if this was already, it probably was, this kind of stuff was going on, but I get the feeling they're specifically going for the militarists of the 1930s, right? And
I think so. And actually, I think this film also has in its sights. So, as I said, so Kotoku Shusui is the actual anarchist the character is based on, right? And he's a
right,
real person. He was
this is the
ex
character played by Juzo Itami, right?
yes, by Atami, yeah. Who I always forget for some reason was like a long-running actor before he ever became a
Yeah,
director.
yeah,
Um, he gets to have a pretty good sex scene in this too.
yeah.
I'm sure it was
Well, also he's that he's like, I might be an anarchist, but basically I'm an old perv first.
well, Lech,
Yeah,
yes. um, but yeah, so that's something else later on I would love to read more about if we could find a good book. But it's about the history of Japanese. There's a few pamphlets that Freedom Press put out back in the
yeah,
day, but I don't know if anybody's expanded them into a full book. But there is an interesting history there of Osugi Sakai, and because they were connected to the international, they knew, you know, they'd met Bakunin, and so he'd been in Yokohama shooting pool, and
right. I think I've got some books on the list, maybe that I've made note of that might come up on our other show. So also we got a new cinematographer, Tatsuzuki, new music as well, Kenjiro. You know, again, first class stuff. This is a much angrier film than the first one, isn't it? Like, it's a really angry film.
it's crazy. It seems like it's got an axe to grind against, yeah, as I said, against this kind of fascistic. Yeah, that guy's terrifying. He looks like a vampire,
Yeah,
right?
yes, he does, absolutely.
And
He's like
then
Goku
his
or
stud
something
guy,
on Earth.
just the guy who gets his arm hacked off or hacks off his own arm at one point, and he's got like blackened teeth. And
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
the
that
guy
guy's awesome.
later on gets his eye put out and close up like out of a Fulci film, and then he's got an eye patch. The cop character,
But
the slum is so filthy and
yeah,
so believably gross.
but the thing is, what I like about it as well is it's an angry film. It's really serious. It's really serious. But at the same time, they didn't forget to put in all the satisfying violence.
Oh yeah,
There's a little bit more sex in this one, not much, but it's like a proper exploitation movie. But it's an exploitation movie that is when we were talking recently on Not in Short Scope, we were talking about the treacherous, right?
yes,
I was thinking, yeah, here we again, you know, this is
yeah.
what adults should be watching in theaters, right? Proper
The torture
story.
scenes, Atami's anarchist character, right? The torture
Oh
scenes
yeah,
are brutal.
yeah,
Like I was, oh, and then finally they give him the plague,
yeah.
which I suspect is a direct reference to that group that was working in China in
I think
Manchuria.
so. I think so. Yeah.
You know, again, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this is the equivalent of like those Italians like Salinas and, you know, who are writing the spaghetti westerns that had the axe to grind.
Yeah. I
He's
think it's.
grinding the same axe.
I think maybe because some people, maybe a lot of people aren't necessarily as familiar with the politics of and the history of Japan. It's maybe why that might fly over some people's. So people pick it up in those westerns, right? there's not
Right.
questions and stuff. But in these films, I'm wondering if some viewers, it just comes across as, oh, that's a cool idea, it's exploitation or whatever. I'm not sure if that stuff is necessarily as well known, right? So
But we've talked before elsewhere about like the pinky violence films too, and how often they're kind of this idea of this sex film that's sort of repurposed almost to be this like scabrous attack on everything that's wrong with,
well, returned, right, by some people.
Well, later on, but unnecessarily, as we discovered, because
Yes, true, yes.
the actual film is more revolutionary than the French bullshit.
Tell me, can dialectics break bricks? I'm still not sure.
That one's the better example. But no, I don't think they can. But anyway, yeah, you're right. This film is just like, oh my God, when they burn the slum down, it's apocalyptic. Apocalyptic and just, yeah, you're right, searing with anger.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. I'm really glad we watched it again because I now have a newfound appreciation for the sequel. And I shall write a much more favorable review for any potential reprint of my first book and give it its due, I think.
So a couple of years later, where's Broken Oath hailing
Hong
from?
Kong, right? Golden Harvest, Cheng Chang-ho directed, choreography by Yang Ping and Hu Sha. And it's got a little bit of a basher throwback vibe to it, a little bit in parts. But then it also brings some much more sophisticated kind of swordplay action and stuff towards the end. Right. So
actually, I have to say, where this has the edge, I think, as an adaptation over Lady Snowblood, maybe, is that the martial arts here are more convincing. One of Kankimeko's strengths isn't necessarily actually her Iado, right? Her swordsmanship, it doesn't stack up to
you can see like treating her with kid gloves. But the thing is, I think those films are they're not designed to bring the white hot thrill of a kung fu film, right? It's a totally different presentation.
Sure.
I don't think you're supposed to
more staged. Maybe it is more staged.
Yeah, it's more mannered and it's more about yeah. So,
but that said, I go back and rewatch any scene of Katsu Shintaro in Zatoichi, and you will see exceedingly well choreographed, well filmed, believable swordplay. Right? I think, and but anyway, this film has that in spades.
So we got Angela Mao basically replacing the Kajimiko character, and yes, take it.
With a little bit of female scorpion.
Well, I was wondering about
she literally throws scorpions on people.
Scorpions, which she uses a lot. She's not sparing, but I don't know where she keeps them. But she's got a whole shitload of scorpions. She puts.
It's funny. At one point, she does fall on them. At one point, though, and then gets repeatedly bitten by her own scorpions.
I do wonder, like how. Like obviously you take the poison out or whatever, but scorpions can still fucking hurt you, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering how many people got harmed in the making of this film. There's fucking scorpions on their neck.
These are not CGI scorpions.
No.
They're not animatronics. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a variation. I mean, it's interesting.
Well, the opening scene is quite shockingly a recreation of the original
and
film.
Then it kind of wanders off on its own journey, right? And I can certainly see, even if I had seen Lady Snowblood before seeing Broken Oath, I can easily see after a few years, and I'd forgotten, I wouldn't have had this pegged as a Lady Snowblood. It's not so much a remake, it's more like a reworking or something. It's like they've rejigged it a little bit.
Yeah.
And speaking of exceedingly beautiful women, I mean, Angela Mao, fucking hell. Always a pleasure to watch her at work. You got Michael Chan, Bruce Lung, Dean Sheck, hooray. The thing I noticed this time, which I wouldn't have known back in the day watching this, now that I'm a lot more familiar with the world of pink films, is the actress who plays her mother.
Who is topless in a quite striking scene.
Yes, totally naked. Yeah, she's Naomi Oka. Or as she's Ho Mei. She's also in one other Golden Harvest film called The Association. But basically, she was in fucking dozens and dozens and dozens of pink films. So she's
so she's Japanese.
A recognizable, recognizable pink star. So she jumped out at me. I was like, what? I didn't expect that because I would not have recognized her when I first saw this film back in the day. Yeah, pretty solid little kung fu one. This one, I think, and with some nice little frisson. You know, they got scorpions. You got the guy with a hand-like claw.
Yep.
Fire breather.
Yes.
There's some nice little bits and pieces. Add a bit of spice to it, right?
Sorry, so the heavyset fellow who has quite an intense and effective fight scene, is that Samo or not?
Yeah, Samo's in it.
Okay.
As
So
is Yumpio as well as in there. You can spot a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, Samo in that beard hair combination looks like Paul L. Smith.
He does a bit, yeah.
And he's got almost got a bit of like the you know, the squint. I was I was like, holy shit, who's this Paul L. Smith? And then I was like, is that Samo?
I'm surprised they haven't had him play Bluto.
Well, that's the thing. I really had a Bluto. Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went. Yeah, no, I enjoyed this a lot actually. This I think it's a very it's a good, they've taken the core, basically the setup, and they've done a good job of redoing that in a Chinese setting, and then they've gone off in their own direction with it. So
yeah,
you don't ever feel like, oh, I'm just watching the same film again with different actors.
No. And I do really wonder if the scorpion thing is a coincidence or not. Like,
yeah, I wonder too.
Because it's also one of those things you're like, I don't know how widely those films played. It seems almost like someone had heard of the Jailhouse Scorpion films, but hadn't seen them.
Right.
And, like, assumed she had scorpions or something like that. Or yeah.
I also like the reframing of it. So, you know, in the original Lady Snowblood, she trains with this old priest, right, at like some sort of Japanese monastery or whatever, right? And
right now it's a bess, right? It's a
it's a Shaolin nunnery that she's at, right? But that all worked well, except in this case she gets kicked out because they're trying to do the opposite. They're not trying to do was it Nishimura Cole who played?
Yes.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, and he was like in that very Japanese way of like, you know, you have no soul. You will become an instrument of
child of the netherworld, right?
Yes, yeah. It's very Kazuo Koike, for sure, right? It is just another version of Daigoro from Lone Wolf Cub.
When they train the ninjas and demon spies or stuff like that. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great movie too. But anyway, so yeah. But in this case, they're trying to actually tell her not to be that, but then she just can't. She can't not be.
Yeah, she's quite bored with everything to do with Shaolin other than the fighting. Right?
I like when she hops out the window during religion class or whatever.
And she's then look on her face like, God, it's boring.
Yeah. And then immediately
in the sutras.
Then just torturing some guys who try to like rape her outside, like, you know, the school, like the nuns come upon her, she's like holding a scorpion in this guy's face or something like that, and he's anyway, yeah. Good times. Yeah,
no, it's a good one. It's a good one. It's definitely worth your time as a little. I mean, there's the overlap is there, but it's almost its own thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okie doke. So.
Oh yes. So here's the thing. So as I said, I when I read that, oh my God, Kazuo Koike and Nagai Go collaborated on a comic. Well, this is going to be great. And what I pictured in my mind was something more like the seriousness of Lone Wolf Cub with maybe the seriousness of Devilman, creating some sort of like, you know, heavy, powerful, you know, And this is not the Go. This is very much Go Nagai.
Yep.
And it's harder to parse exactly what Kazuo Koike's contribution might have been.
Like I said, the only other thing that comes anywhere near it that I've seen in his oeuvre is Mad Bull 34, right? That's the only thing near.
I don't think I actually know that. I don't think I've ever.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
Okay.
And make sure you watch the English dub as well.
Okay.
Yeah, new layer of awesomeness on that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Will do. Okay.
I'd be happy to do it for the show. Because if we can get a scanlation of the comic, I don't think it's ever been properly released. It might have done, but I doubt. I mean, it's not.
I'll take
I'll put it that way. Mad Bull 34, the anime version, was one of those notorious titles during that manga mania boom, right?
Right.
Yes, I'm surprised you're not familiar with.
Yeah, no, that's funny, and I'm surprised too because, as I said, I was anything that was connected to Koike that I knew. So I watched all of the anime versions of the Crying Freeman. I read some of the Crying Freeman stuff,
aka Hit and Rape.
Youch. Okay, all right. So yeah, we're kind of more in that territory for sure.
Oh
with,
yes,
with HANAPPE,
BAZOOKA.
It's, I mean, what? So basically, the story is about a young man who is not very cool, not very with it, who while masturbating somehow opens a portal to hell through his finger movements on his dick or something. That's a bit easy, but basically, it seemed to be.
Yeah. In the comic, apparently he spells out abracadabra, right, in some way. Oh, we should mention that you did mention it up front, but just to reiterate, there's 10 volumes of this thing, and we read I read a volume scanlated. I didn't have a chance to look at the untranslated second volume. Did you?
I did, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
More of the same, basically.
Yeah, and then we watched the OVA version, right? So yeah, God knows what happens in
the other 9 volumes of it.
Yeah, so yeah, this is. Oh, carry on. What happens?
Well,
next?
basically, yeah. So he opens a portal to hell, or some version of, and these 2 demons appear. One of whom is she's cuter actually, I think, in the comic than they made her in the OVA. She's a bit more, a bit in a way they're kind of mapping later stuff, like more that devil man of the 80s.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of devil man in there, isn't there? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and he actually appears in the OVA,
right,
along with every other friggin' like Mazinger Z's in there.
Yeah, I saw the Starship Enterprise.
Yes, yes. I also wondered about the. Sure, CBS or Paramount was very happy with that product placement. But yes, so yeah, and there's one of them's got a big bazooka. He's a big demony thing who has a bazooka for some reason, which in the OVA has a vagina in it. It seems that he places a missile in.
Of course, it does.
And then she's a kind of a sexy demon-esque thing with little fur pasties, however you want like to say it, over her nipples. And they proceed to make his life kind of a living hell by giving him superpowers that he doesn't know how to do anything with, and also by having a lot of sex with his family, including his dad, his mom, and his sister.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
His family becomes sex slaves.
Yes. His dad also is very greedy, and apparently, so he's overcome with love for all this money, and he's allowed to get a harem.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, he gets this super sex. Well, also he's given a power to be able to fuck any woman he wants by pointing his penis finger at them.
Yes, yeah, which is funny that they don't, because I think in Japan that's kind of a thing. Maybe because it's his finger, but I'm surprised that wasn't blurred in some way. But you know what I mean? Because generally speaking, all genitals would have been blurred in those days. But yeah, but it's clearly a knob he's got in his finger, which
he's not really very. I don't know. He doesn't quite know how to use it properly, and also he wants to have super strength and beat people up, which he can do, but he can only do it if he's cold-hearted and doesn't give a shit. So as soon as he starts standing up for the little guy or something, he loses his power, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of an interesting moral quandary that they're trying to get into. I mean, I'm really quite interested to see how it works out from volumes 3 to 10. Because I mean, this has got to be more Nagaigo than Kazuo Koike, I think, because it's got, like when we talked about with Violence Jack and with Cutie Honey, it has got that absolute, what the fuck now? What's gonna happen? Like, I have no idea what's going to happen.
The absolute stream of consciousness made up as he went on, because he talks openly and honestly about how he just doesn't know when he sits down to the page.
Oh, I well believe it.
And famously, he doesn't plot, right? So it's one of the reasons why Devilman is such an enjoyable and also frustrating read, because I'm sure I've said this before. He throws an incredible idea out there, and you're like, "Oh my god, that you could run 5 volumes with just that," and he'll throw it out the window.
Forgets about it. Yeah.
1 chapter later and go on something else. That's equally awesome. But when, you know, huge spoilers here. So if you haven't read Devilman and you think you might want to, go away and do that. But when Mickey, who is Devilman's, you know, Akira's girlfriend, gets decapitated, right? He apparently had no idea when sitting down to write that chapter that that's where that he was going to have her little brother shot with an arrow, and yeah, Mickey dismembered, right? And he sat at the end of it. He was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Okay, and sent it off to whatever magazine, while simultaneously it's running on TV for children.
Quite impressive, well, that he's clearly writing all this with one hand as well. Like,
obviously.
I mean, the level of like
etchiness.
Oh, Jesus Christ! I mean, everything you could possibly think of, plus is sexualized in this comic, right? Like,
yes,
just when you think, oh, that's one thing, at least they're not going to sex. Oh no,
like, yeah, it's pure trap, pure trap,
and it has to be said, it is massively entertaining, and as is the OVA. I really enjoyed the OVA.
right.
Still don't quite understand
what's going on.
Saint Dunstan's forceps.
No.
Yeah, no, what the fuck? Yeah, no, I also get the feeling the OVA a little bit felt to me like it might have, maybe they planned to have a second one. It feels like it was meant to continue a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
To me. But we're left with just 45 minutes. But it's I mean, what a 45 minutes. They've it's also quite different from the comic in some ways. Like they go off in different directions. Well, unless that stuff's in the later comic.
Later volumes, yeah. They may have just skipped a lot.
Yeah, but it is interesting that they have, that it plays in a slightly again, as if like Nagai goes already got bored or something. Obviously, I don't know how evolved he is in the OVA version, but
there's an incredible scene quite near the end where he comes back, our main character, and he's again really upset, and everyone's just like ignoring him, and he's like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna off myself then. And then the bazooka demon just goes like, dozo. And so he does, he throws himself off a building, and then everyone's like, oh, we might have pushed him a little. He wasn't taking the ribbing as well as we thought he was going to take the ribbing.
I like the bit as well, the kind of moment of realization where, you know, they're basically sexually molesting his entire family, and he's like getting angry at them, and they just look at him and they're like, we're fucking demons, moron. This is what we do. Like, oh yeah. Forgot about it. It's funny that in the OVA, it's not just that he's spelled out something or other with his wanking, but it also seems to be some sort of a magic video cassette or something that he gets from a store hiding out in, right?
Yes.
I did like, again, thinking of you, thought of you when he's laying out all his different magazines, his posters, and he's just got a panorama of filth in front of him, and he just here we go. And I thought, yes, that's my good friend Nick there.
Well, thankfully, I never opened a portal to hell.
There's always time.
Yeah, right.
You just got to learn how to, you know, maybe involve maybe one onto a Ouija board or something.
There we go. So yeah, 10 volumes.
I'm very curious. I mean, this would be I'm surprised because it is Nagaigo and Kazuo Koike. Obviously, someone went to the trouble of doing one of them. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been scanlated all the way through. I mean, I know it's all depending on the generosity of others and people busy like that. But I mean, there's so many people out there now doing this stuff. I'm wondering, is it not maybe it's not a very well regarded or well known comic, maybe Hanappе Bazooka. I mean, I have to admit, when you mentioned it to me, I'd never heard of it before.
Right, yeah, no, it's not. As I said, I'd seen it once or twice, but then I didn't realize that there was this connection to Kazuo Koike as well.
What I mean is, even the anime, right? Like, I don't.
Right.
it's not one of those ones that comes up in conversation like things like Mad Bull and stuff like that, right? But I can imagine people would like
It
coming
feels
around it
in
like,
some
what
ways,
the fuck is this? You know?
it feels to me like there's one of Nagai Go's obsession seems to be this sort of story because I mean the Mao Dante is the original, right? And then Mao Dante, which you can get if you're interested. Mao Dante has been fully scanlated, and then Mao Dante is the DNA for Devilman,
Right.
right? And then you've got Devilman Lady, which is also fully, which is the longest actually of all. Devilman Lady is hugely long compared to Devilman, and it's quite interesting. It's very horny.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the animated adaptations as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen that, but I've read the entire run of the comics. But yeah, these are all kind of connected, and then I feel like this was his comedy take. Like he kind of done
Right.
some serious takes on this idea, and then he wanted to do one that was just pure, pure silliness.
Well, his idea of comedy, right? Like,
yes, yeah,
not
just
necessarily funny for some people.
right.
Yeah, for some strange reason, some people don't find sexual assault in the slightest bit amusing.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
But Go Nagai certainly does. It's knee slapping, rib tickling good for him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, obviously, if you can read Japanese, then go at it. Like I said, you can. Well, I don't know. Again, that's another thing is you assume this stuff is, but you know, some things do go out of print, and this might not be something you can find all volumes easily down at the local book off. Right? Like maybe this, I didn't look it up. Maybe this changes hands online for large sums of money. I don't know how large the print run was or anything like that. But if you can't and you're working with English, I mean, you can find it online. You can just Scanlation HANAPPE BAZOOKA one volume. I mean, you should know what you're getting into. You know, what is it? NSFW, right?
Oh yes, definitely.
Unless of course you work in Go Nagai's studio, which is perfectly fine then.
Right. It is from that era of his artwork that I like the most as well. I find the 80s work gets a little stiffer and a little more awkward looking, and this is when he's at his most like it's like the same as the early volumes of Violence Jack. It's just so so strong, like on the page.
It's got a real confidence about it, isn't it? It's like he's not afraid to draw anything. Like
yeah.
Yeah, which maybe he should have been. I don't know.
Perhaps. Was it that line from the Crumb documentary? Maybe my pencils and pen should be taken away from me.
Right.
Right.
So there we go. A nice little anin tofu prin dessert to cap off your you're done with Lady Snowblood. You want to just a little something before you go off to bed. Give HANAPPE BAZOOKA a go, I guess.
Yeah. Just be very careful about finger placement when reading it. Apparently.
Yes, you may summon.
There can be consequences.
You may summon the spirit.
The cuter version of Pinhead. The much cuter version.
Or Jimmy Savile or something like that.